Can Scotland win their first Six Nations this weekend, and are England in crisis? So Dom, it was a Scottish surprise and English humiliation. What on earth happened last weekend?
Some good rugby on show over in Murrayfield, that's for sure. Just a shame it wasn't replicated over in Rome. But no, it started with that France game. Scotland, absolutely incredible. I think it's probably one of the best performances we've seen them put out in a very, very long time. I thought, France weren't necessarily even poor. Maybe the first half they could have been a little bit better. They were quite leaky with points, and it was a France side that we'd seen more of in the autumns when they were, there was a lot of concern about how many points they were leaked, and they'd been good so far in the Six Nations, but that game they kind of returned to old ways a little bit with how easily Scotland were able to get through. But credit to Scotland because they were hammering them down, and Finn Russell just absolutely running the show from 10 and just dictating what was going on everywhere. It was a complete performance by the entire nation, and very well deserving. And they now, obviously, as you say, find themselves in a winning situation, which I don't think anybody had tipped at the start of the tournament. So it's nice for all the Scots out there, that's for sure. But the job is not done yet. That's also for sure.
Well, that is absolutely, you've hit the nail on the head, really, in terms of to a man, Scotland were absolutely unbelievable. I think we might as well get started into that one. We'll get entangled later. I'm sure you'll not even want to preview that. I'm sure you'll just want to get it done at some point, but we'll come on to that later. Scotland 50, France 40. 90 points. Saturday lunchtime in the sun in Edinburgh. What an unbelievable game that was. Scotland coming out fast, that Darcy Graham try. France coming back into it, scoring 2 tries of their own, and then we sort of thought, is it just going to be one of these days where France just are their clinical selves and just get the job done? But Scotland just kept on them throughout the whole of the match. I think apart from that, I guess that last 15-20 minutes where maybe they took the foot off the pedal slightly when they were so far ahead. But Dom, I think that's genuinely, I don't think I've ever seen Scotland play so well as that. It was absolutely superb. What do you think was the key for Scotland in this game for having such dominance over a side like France?
It's very easy to go down the route of the usual things like, it's a mentality thing, or they just wanted it more on the day. And I think whatever that is the case, I think this group has just gelled so much over these past couple of weeks that it's just clicked them up a gear, because we knew that they could put in good performances like they did against Argentina. That first half against Argentina in the autumn was superb, and obviously then they let it slip, and it was like, they can't see out a game. These guys that are coming off the bench, they can't do the job. And I think Gregor Townsend has kind of cut away some of the dead weight of the team of old, and hasn't been afraid to make some kind of more wild changes and changes in personnel.
Changes do you think what changes are you talking about there in terms of cutting away dead weight and bringing in new players? So who would you highlight there?
Duan van der Merwe for one. I think he was a big problem for Scotland for a while, and the fact that they've now got Kyle Steyn, who has stepped up, has played every minute of this tournament and has been electric. Got 2 tries for himself on the weekend, but I think as well, just in the forwards, the back row was always kind of something that they didn't have anything really to fall back on. And I thought Freddie Douglas, to say that he came on, put on quite a good shift for the 15 or so minutes that he was on. And I think it's things like that where you can see now the progression of where Scotland are headed. I think the SRU themselves don't really know what life after Gregor Townsend looks like, especially as far as 2028 onwards. I think they're kind of just taking it one step at a time. But credit to Gregor Townsend, because he was under the firing line at the start of this tournament. People considering, if they finish badly, is he going to be gone? And now the boot's on the other foot. It's talking about, is Borthwick's going to be here come the end of the tournament? But I think what they've done this time round has just been... It's been a massive step up that they needed. It's a massive confidence boost, but hopefully for the Scottish fans and their point of view, it's not just kind of a pipe dream and something that, you know, they look forward to for next 2027 Six Nations, but also for the World Cup later on as well. So hopefully, yeah, they can just continue this and still keep building the players that are coming through the system.
Well, I mean, we looked at it, didn't we, before the tournament even began, with some of our previews as well as after the first game week, and it looked like, you say that about Gregor Townsend and Steve Borthwick, it looked the complete opposite way. It looked like Steve Borthwick had cracked the code. England were on the right track. They were heading towards that World Cup. They were looking like they could really challenge France. That this weekend that we're going to have now, that would be their weekend to sort of go to Paris and win the tournament. It hasn't transpired like that. I think a lot of pressure was put on Gregor Townsend, myself included. I was looking at the results they have had, and I think rightly so in many ways. They were really struggling to get over the line against these big sides. England have a generally good record, but against France and stuff like that, and even to a certain extent against Wales, where they were really put under the caution that game, and something that's sort of been levelled at Scotland quite a bit in previous years has been their sort of bottle to manage those big moments and stay in games when it's not going their way, because they can go very well when it is going their way. It's just when it turns on the other foot. I think that Wales one was a big confidence booster for them. They also don't have a very good record, Principality. I think they've just taken that in. Dom, you mentioned about the back row there. I mean, talk us through Matt Fegerson's tournament so far. He's been fantastic the whole way through. Could you talk us through a wee bit about his impact, and then I guess for someone that's played a bit of back row yourself as well, you've got Rory Darge, who's been a great player for them for a number of years. Could you talk through sort of, I guess, the impacts that they had in this game?
I think that back three in the back row is... Sorry, did you say back row or back three? Back row, yeah. That back row is... It's almost a perfect balance, and I think for me the perfect balance of a back row is a strong carrying, you know, absolute workhorse of an 8, Jack Dempsey, and then a 7 who is just a nuisance, is all over the place, Rory Darge, and then a 6 who could slip into that 5 role, who is just a bit of a defensive monster, and they just tick all the boxes in those 3, and it just works so well. The fact that they've all played full 80s as well is nice to be able to do, and they're all fairly young as well, I think, aren't they? You know, in the middle of their career, they've got a couple of years left probably playing together. Yeah. But then you look at the
next World Cup, you would imagine.
Yeah, exactly. I think they'll be, you know, that's the starting back row, but then you also put in, you know, the likes of Jamie Ritchie into that conversation, as we said before, Freddie Douglas,
Gregor Brown, who was in the second row, he's played there before as well.
Yeah.
You talk about 6 that can play in
Gregor Brown, Josh Bayliss, so they've got plenty of options as well in reserve. So, and that was, you know, a point that I highlighted, and I think we highlighted after the autumns, was that firepower that England demonstrated coming off the bench in the autumn, Scotland didn't always seem to have that, but they do kind of have that now with, you know, they've chopped and changed their hookers in the front row quite a lot this tournament. You know, George Turner's played, Dave Cherry's played, Ewan Ashman's played. They've switched it about, and I thought it was a big risk to put George Turner straight in. Even Darcy Ray as well, you know, hadn't really played a minute, but then gets a start. So it's decisions like that I'm really liking from Gregor Townsend, because it just shows that he's not afraid to make those big calls and those big changes, because he's clearly making them because, you know, he's confident in that decision. Whereas I think that's where Borthwick is ever so slightly let down. Well, not ever so slightly, quite well let down, because I don't think he's got that bottle to make a big call. Personally, I think Maro Itoje shouldn't start next game. Potentially, he shouldn't even feature. His head has not been in it. You know, there's been those him shouting at Finn Smith for a penalty decision, things like that. I think he seems a bit lost at the minute. I think the team seem a bit lost at the minute. And
I think Scotland, you're rightly so, and I think it's a big thing when you think you're talking through the depth there that Scotland have in terms of those positions, getting those boys minutes. I think that also works out probably quite well for them for the World Cup as well, building towards that. But I think Scotland, the first hurdle they've always tried to get over is, can we try and go and win a Six Nations? Because I think they sort of look at the World Cup and they're just like, oh well, that's the World Cup. Can we try and win a Six Nations first? Because that's the first sort of step along the road to that. And they've always sort of struggled. They've always beaten certain sides, looked really impressive, and then not looked so impressive. And I think this tournament, when the pressure has been on them, with the talent that they do have, they are starting to deliver. Apart from that Italy game was a struggle for them. They didn't manage that game particularly well in the pouring rain, but I think that just to get through that. And you mentioned Kyle Steyn earlier. Honestly, I think him or potentially Matt Ferguson, just like man of the tournament, men of the tournament for Scotland. I mean, Kyle Steyn's been absolutely superb. Everything that you want from a test winger, he has. He can kick, he can defend, he's quick, he can finish. All these things. And I guess he's not as what's the word, sexy a player as Duhan van der Merwe, scoring all these tries, scoring from the halfway line at Twickenham, but he just seems to really get the job done. He's good in the air as well, and I think having him being brought in, and then you've got Darcy Graham on the other side. I also think Kinghorn coming in at fullbacks really sort of steadied them in terms of attacking sense. He's just a big presence in the sort of in the wide channels, and to sort of step off that, and then I have to bite in on him. I think he's giving them a lot more space and giving them a lot more, also the team a lot more kicking prowess. So it's been absolutely fantastic. And White as well. I don't think Antoine Dupont was a particularly big fan of him after that. I think he according to some reports, I think he may have said something to him after the Kyle Steyn tribe. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see a battle between those two next year anyway. But he was fantastic at 9, and yeah, as you said, Finn Russell, as always, when Finn Russell ticks, Scotland tend to tick, so superb. I think, Dom, the main thing I noticed with this, and I noticed it going into the match in terms of the lineup that they chose, they picked possibly as big a team they possibly could in terms of forwards. You had Gregor Brown in the sort of you had him in the second row, then you had Matt Ferguson and Jack Dempsey in the back row, rather than maybe going for a slightly smaller flanker. And I think it showed, because just with the intensity and the power within they went into contact, like not many teams can do that to France, where they like physically actually dominated them. And it's a very hard thing to do with France, because they've got such brilliant athletes as well as such big men. And I think that was the key thing for them, Scotland. And I think it was just also a lot of the thing was keeping the ball in the hands, keeping moving, keeping attacking, keep going to the corner, fusing the 3, because they know that France are going to go up the other end and score points, so you need to score the maximum amount of points. A word on France, they somehow, despite playing objectively quite poorly, giving away a lot of penalties, somehow end up with 40 points. I mean, absolutely unbelievable. But what do you think sort of was the key, I guess, downfall for them, or do you think it was Scotland were just so good?
I think Scotland going forwards and their set piece were just outclassed. They outclassed France massively. They just didn't seem to make the most of the ball when they had it in hand, like they have done so far in the tournament. It's been very, they spread, and then they keep it tight and go boom, 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 boom down the line and create their own space. But Scotland weren't allowing them to create their own space. They were very quick up on them. I think Scotland almost doubled the amount of post contact meters compared to France. So it just shows that Scotland were just so keen on shutting them down, crowding them and just almost making them panic. And sometimes the panic moments is when France can come alive, because they can just create kind of something out of nothing. Yeah, Scotland just did a really good job to just shut it all down. I think the scoreline is actually flattering for France. They had those what was it, 3 tries in the final 10 minutes or so,
Yeah.
which I think, as I say, was flattering, because it was 47-26 as Ramos scored and late on, and then they just kind of went on a little bit after that. But yeah, I think that was probably just Scotland switching off ever so slightly. But you know, the improvement from Scotland is that they've gone from being able to play a 55-minute game to now they've gone to a 70-minute game. So now they're just that little bit closer to go into an 80-minute game. And I think if they can do that against Ireland and, you know, really hammer that home, they could. You know, it's not out of the realms of improbability that they could win this tournament.
Yeah. On that, you mentioned the last 3 tries in the final 10 minutes and the sort of the France coming back into it. France get a bonus point there. So there was a moment, or I think it was, they were on 14 points. Scotland had scored maybe, it was like 31 or maybe 37, I can't quite remember. There was a fair gap between the two sides.
Well, it's 47-14 at one
Yeah,
point.
it was 47-40. Yeah, it's a crazy scoreline. And there was a moment at that stage where, you know, France are not getting any points out of this. You know, they're. Do you think Scotland maybe could have altered their game plan and maybe tried to sort of pin France down a wee bit more, maybe go a little bit more pragmatic and sort of look at the wider tournament and sort of say, right, let's stop them from getting the bonus point here? Or do you think that would be a bit of a harsh thing to say?
I think it's always difficult to. Coaches, I think, are often try and change their game plan if they're in a losing situation. And so to kind of turn around to your players or lay on a message to your players where it's like, okay, just ease off, or, you know, change it so that you're stopping them from scoring when that's already kind of what you've been doing. It's quite a bizarre message.
Yeah, just to, like, maybe, I don't know, kick. It's a hard thing to say, even just to like kick a wee bit more, I guess. It's sort of try and pin them back, use the kicking game a wee bit more. I don't know.
I think.
Yeah.
I think it's probably a mixture of those Scotland lads in that first 60 minutes have gone absolutely foot to the floor and have burnt themselves out a little bit maybe. So then it's come to those final 15 minutes or so, and France have gone, right, we need to really turn it on. We need to get this bonus point because this is going to keep us alive in this tournament. So I think it's probably a combination of France just being France and being able to just switch it on, create a couple of moments of magic, but also Scotland probably tiring and just being like, okay, we've got this, we can kind of ease our foot off the gas a little bit, but not so much that, you know, we throw this 50-odd point lead that we've got, or whatever it was. So, yeah, I don't think you can criticise Scotland too much and say, they could have done this, they could have done this. Yes, they needed to be a bit more defensively resilient in those final 15 minutes, but when you're playing an opposition like France and you find yourself in a realm where you're not used to being, I think you can kind of forgive them a little bit.
Well, I think, yeah, that is true. It was an absolutely superb performance from Scotland. But we shall see, I suppose, with that bonus point that France gets, seems could decide the tournament. You know, I think with the superior points difference that France have, it could very much be an invaluable point. It could decide the championship. But absolutely fantastic from Scotland, as we said, just from 1 to 23. Really, it was superb. Move on to the Friday night game. I'll just give Dom a little bit more time to sort of mentally prepare himself for talking about the England game, because I reckon that could there could be a couple of tears shed. It's Ireland-Wales on the Friday night. It was 27 points to 17, putting in a performance that we haven't really seen from them before, which was a more defensive performance. Now I'm going to read out a bit of a stat. This is from Opta. Obviously Wales's defence was a massive improvement. They put a lot into it. And the big thing here, Dom, was 94.3% of their defensive rucks saw only one man entering that ruck. This seems to be a sort of like quite clear tactic that they used in this game. Sort of break down, I guess, Wales's defensive effort in this game and getting so close to Ireland.
So I think what Tandy's trying to do there is very common tactic. We call it icing the ruck. So you kind of just leave it alone, or you put one man in there to kind of potentially disrupt it a little bit, maybe see if they can get over the ball first and just kind of try their luck. And if you don't get much coming from it, then you just leave it alone. You spread out, so then you've got more players out wider to kind of deal with the defence that's coming at the attack that's coming at you. And I think for a team like Wales, who, you know, you look at the games that they had in the autumn, they had that New Zealand game. I'm not really going to count the South Africa game, but you can kind of put it into that conversation of they conceded a lot of points. You know, they conceded a lot against England in that first round, and even against England last year. I think the amount of points that Wales have been leaking over the last, you look at the last year of international games that they've had, it's been too many points. And so the tactic from Tandy to kind of ice the rucks, as I say, kind of just leave them alone, have more players out wide that, you know, because they do often tend to miss a few tackles here and there. So it's kind of making sure that you're making more tackles than you are missing, or kind of that percentage stays up, that you're still making a higher percentage of tackles than you are than having it too low. But I mean, you look at the tackle completion. Alex Mann breaking the record for the most tackles in a Six Nations game. 32 is just absolutely incredible. And then you've got Daft Jenkins, James Botham, Dewey Lack and Ben Carter all filling the top 5. And it's 19 is Ben Carter with the lowest out of those 5. So you can see that the defensive effort has improved so much. I think still scoring tries is a real issue for them. You know, when was the last time they got close to the realms of a bonus point kind of situation in the last year?
Well, I think it was against
so rare.
New Zealand, isn't it? That was the last time they've sort of
Yeah.
like properly scored a lot of tries, probably from little opportunities.
Yeah, and even then, Tom Rogers hasn't played this Six Nations, I don't think. So
Yeah, well,
he got a hat trick on the day.
injured.
So.
Yeah.
So we might see him feature against Italy. But I think my question for you, as the Ireland representative, did Ireland deserve to win that game?
Yes, I think they did deserve to win that game. As much as Wales were absolutely fantastic in defence, and they kept in the game very well. I mean, it was 19-17 with about 20-25 minutes to go there, and that was huge for Wales. We will touch briefly on the Rhys Carey try later, but I think Wales were better than we've seen them. Well, I suppose from a defensive point of view, they nullified Ireland quite a bit. That's the best I've seen them in defence. So I think they threw something at Ireland which maybe they weren't expecting. I think there was a lot of changes to the Irish side. There was a lot of new players in, a lot of boys rested, like Dan Sheehan, for example. But yeah, I think Ireland, they managed the game all right. It wasn't the perfect performance, wasn't the best performance, but they did end up getting the bonus point victory. It's probably something you probably need to look at in terms of being a little bit more dynamic throughout the whole game in their attack. It sort of seemed like the first sort of 10-20 minutes was really, really good, really strong. You had boys running with intensity in attack, and then it just seemed to sort of tail off a little bit. They just sort of started to get, obviously Wales' pressure on them in defence was sort of nullifying them a bit. So I think it's just sort of trying to find a way around that and to try and problem solve whilst in the game. But I'd be pretty happy with that. I think we got a couple of boys, as I said, some game time, and that's hugely important building towards the World Cup. We got the bonus point victory in the end, and against what was a very good Wales side on the day. But I think for Wales, I think that's really the big thing to take away from this game. I think we all sort of Ireland did what was expected of them, which was getting a bonus point victory. But for Wales, you've got boys like Rhys Carey now with a bit of... Do you want to talk us through his try from someone that's playing in the front row this year? I
mean, it's probably the situation, a place that he wasn't expecting to find himself in. You know, situated kind of outside that 15-metre channel towards the wing. You know, you wouldn't necessarily put a prop in one of your wide channels, but he's found himself there. He's almost done the show and go to Rob Balakoon, and off he's gone. He's spotted the gap. I think the only reason he gets through, other than pure jouet, is I think Jamie Osborne was out of position. I think Rob Balakoon was drifting, and so Jamie Osborne should have told him to kind of go for Carey rather than carrying on that drift defence, which then left Balakoon kind of on the back foot, got fended off, and then there was absolutely no chance to get hold of him, because he then had to spin around, chase after him, and Jamie Osborne was nowhere to be seen as well. So I think, as an individual try, it's class, because I think if anybody else had really scored that, you'd be like, oh yeah, decent try. But the fact it's a prop, it's like, I love it.
Well, it's 3 tries for him this tournament, and I think it's great that you've got their forwards chipping in with tries, but I think another big thing is we need the backs to show a little bit more for Wales. I think that's a key thing. And they just look a little bit... It just doesn't seem like it's clicking in the same way. You know, I think they're very much going through the forwards, and they could just do... And I'm not saying that the backs are not playing well for Wales, but I think they could just do with a little bit... This is why I sort of advocate for Blair Murray coming in. I think they could just do with a little bit more spark in the backfield, you know, getting the ball maybe off, you know, a couple of strike plays, trying to get the ball into Louis Rees-Zammit's hands, or try and put him through gaps and stuff like that. Just a wee bit more, I guess, dynamism in their attacking structure in the backs, just because I think the forwards have been putting in shift the last 2 games, and it just doesn't seem like they've been able to then sort of go out to the backs and then finish off their opportunities. You know, it just always seems to be sort of breaking down, and as we said, 2 tries in this game, 2 tries in the last game. I think for them, at the point they're in, they need to be scoring more tries if they're going to beat teams, because their defence, which was really good against Ireland, is still not the best defence in the tournament, so they are going to concede tries, so they're going to need to score tries. I think that's a big thing for them. Another big thing I think undone them in this game is sort of a bit of game management in the last, just when they get that try, when they cut that lead down. I think it was just a bit of kicking. I think there was a kick that was made when there wasn't a great chase, and then Ireland sort of picked up on it and then went sort of into their 22 and eventually finished off the game. So I think it's just a wee bit of sort of game management, just calming down in those sort of big moments, when they are tight, when they are in the leads, when they are close, to sort of say, right, well, how are we going to play this now? Let's calm it all down. And sort of playing like that. But still a great performance from the Welsh, and they'll be looking to go into that game against Italy on the weekends at the Principality and try and get their first win in the Six Nations for 3 years now. So it'll be interesting to see how that game goes. But talking about Italy, they managed to pick up a victory. Their first ever victory over England. Italy 23, England 18. We'll touch on Italy first, because I'm sure you have a lot of thoughts on England and stuff like that, and I'll let you go on ahead with that shortly. On Italy, I mean, sort of run down just the absolute change in Italian rugby in the last 3 years, and just how it's just sort of got to this level with such big wins like this.
I think there is probably one man responsible for this whole change, and his name is Gonzalo Quesada. What he has done since joining in 2024 has been outstanding. You know, the turnaround in the last 2 years. I mean, even the turnaround before he came in, you could see that things were developing. You know, that win against Wales in the Six Nations, where it was Capuozzo dancing through at the Principality in the final minutes, and then they go on and to win it with a final kick. I think moments like that were kind of the turning point, but at the same time there was a turning point for the WRU, so I won't sit on that for too long. But Quesada has come in, has reinvented a style of Italian rugby, a very attractive style of rugby, and it's just been a joy to watch, because now that they've stepped up to the plate, it's made the Six Nations it's just made it 10 times more competitive, 10 times more enjoyable, because you see like a game, I don't know, like you see a Scotland-Italy game and you're like, oh, well, Scotland are going to walk it, or like in England-Italy, you know. A couple of years ago, you just said, oh, England are going to walk that. I'm not too bothered about watching it, you know. But now, every single weekend, you're like, oh, I want to watch that game. I want to watch that game. I want to watch that game. And you find yourself sat in front of the telly for 6 hours on a weekend. I'm sure you'd be doing that anyway for any other rugby, but for Six Nations, it's so intense. I think someone summed it up the other. I think it was Andy Farrell. he was talking on the Love of Rugby podcast maybe a couple of weeks ago, but he was saying some Southern Hemisphere players don't get that the Six Nations is like a cup final every single weekend. And mentally, you just have to be so prepared for that. And I think, the integration of Italy into, or a better integration into the URC has done them wonders. The performances they've been churning out in the Six Nations have just been getting better and better and better. Everybody still kind of pins them towards the bottom end, but it's not because of how they play. It's because the other teams are just still better. But they've also had that backing for 20 plus more years, so they've still got things to improve on. But no team is perfect. They're in the top 12 teams in the world, and that is an incredible achievement for them. But yeah, Gonzalo Casado, what he's done, incredible. And a fair play to Italy. They really capitalised the chances that they made for themselves. Yeah,
well, Casado should take a big bit of credit for sort of setting the team on. But I think in terms of the structure of Italian rugby, it's just got a lot better over the past couple of years, in terms of you've seen how their under-20s have been performing in Six Nations, getting a couple of scalps there. And it's just gone from strength to strength to strength. And I think you can see those big players they've got now, like your Tommaso Menincello. I mean, in this game, he scores a try there. He's got a big hand in the winner for Marine. It's just Tommaso. He is a perfect example of what we're talking about, of the rise of Italian rugby, where it's just gone from strength to strength to strength the past couple of years, and we didn't anticipate it to be so quick in terms of Casada coming in. We saw the shoots of Italian rugby growing, but we didn't sort of anticipate it was maybe go as quickly as this, because we know how strong the Six Nations is. And I think someone like Menincello just epitomises that. I'd say he's probably one of the best centres in the world at the minute, certainly on 100%. Form. He's been absolutely fantastic for them. But yeah, Italian rugby, there's been obviously increased sort of in investment, and sort of, you sort of said, but the URC teams, they've been performing better, and I think you're sort of seeing the rewards there. And I feel like Casada is just going in there and he's maximising the resources that he has. They're sort of nailing the basics in terms of competing in the kicking battle, placing a good emphasis on that, but also placing a good emphasis on set piece. Set piece has been really, really strong. The scrum was quite a tight battle in this game. England obviously have a very good scrum. Line out for Italy has been very good as well. And it's just sort of nailing those basics, and they're now winning games that are tight test matches, and I think that is the sign of a really good side, when you can sort of go toe-to-toe with a side where it is tight for the large majority of the game and then go and win it. And it's just that bit of quality from Paolo Garbisi. They sort of edged their way back into the game with a couple of England mistakes, and they just capitalised on it. Beautiful kick by Garbisi, great setup by Ioane, great power from Menincello, and then it goes inside to Marine, and they get the win. From an English point of view, obviously that's what we're all going to be sort of wondering your opinion on. What went wrong?
What have you got? I think Alex Mitchell not being available is a bit of an issue, because you look at then the ranking of seniority of nines. Ben Spencer is definitely number 2 in terms of seniority and that aspect, but then that kind of third spot of who's that final 9 bounces around far too much. Jack Van Portfleet's been thrown around the equation. He was on the bench. Rafi Quirk's been in the conversation. Harry Randall, but he's had injuries here and there. So I think that is one aspect that is contentious. Ben Spencer, in my opinion, shouldn't have been playing, and it's not because I don't think he's a good player. I think for Bath he is exceptional, because he's given that freedom to kind of do what he likes and doesn't have to. He isn't being told to kick all the time. Finn Smith, I don't think, had a good game either, and I think between them they didn't know who was controlling that game. But then you look further out wide, Atkinson in the 12, he looked lost. I felt really bad for him, and he just looked like he didn't know where to put himself. But then also you've got a winger who's playing out of position at 13. Rate Tommy Freeman very highly, but as an international level player, it just didn't make sense to me. But then the most experienced player you've got there is at 15, and I don't think he's chirped enough. He's not played an awful lot as well since his injury on the Lions tour. So I just think that whole back line was wrong. I think Finn Smith, fine, you could have played him, but put players around him that have got a bit more experience. Putting Henry Slade at 12 would have been perfect, because he could have kind of been communicating with Finn and being like, right, we'll do this play, I'll kick here, kind of bossing it around a little bit more. And then in the forwards, I think the forwards were fine. I think they have been all tournament. It's not been an issue. The issue is we cannot rely on box kicking anymore. It's boring. It doesn't work to full effect. The whole point that we've had Freddie Stewart in the squad is because of that. And even him under the high ball, yes, it can work, but Tom Roebuck was so off it on the high ball, and he's usually so reliable. Caden Murley's not the most reliable as well under a high ball. And then you've got Daly as well, who isn't really quick enough to get under those high balls. So it's like, why are we still doing that? I mean, Jonathan Joseph, he came out the other week. I'll just read a quote from him. You might have seen it, but he was like, Steve is a great forwards coach, there's absolutely no doubt, but it's pretty clear attack is bottom of his priority. If he's willing to let Lee, the attack coach, have more time in the week to do what Lee is good at, if the boys aren't being backed to attack without the pressure of mistakes being at the forefront of the mind, then something has to change. I agree with Ben Youngs. If it doesn't matter who's playing in the team at the minute, we can no longer just rely on the kicking game and set piece. So those days are gone. And I completely agree. I said to you before the podcast started, our strength lie in our back row and our centres. And not once have I seen Max Ojomo or Henry Slade. Ollie Lawrence has featured once and played pretty poorly. And then we've, Freeman, as I say, like him as a player, but I don't like him playing at 13 at an international level. It works at Northampton because the standards are lower, but it doesn't work on the international stage. So he seriously needs to have a good look at himself and think, right, this has got to stop. Yeah, relief pressure every now and again with a box kick, but stop relying on it and stop trying to use defence as the best form of attack, because our best form of attack is just running at players. My rant is over.
Well, I think you say about the box kick there, Dom, but I don't know. I felt like it worked pretty well, sort of, kind of throughout the game, but like sort of early on, particularly, it worked quite well.
But that's my point. It works sometimes, but we can't rely on sometimes. It's got to be. It can't just be okay. Plan A is box kick and chase the return, because then if that's not working and teams are reading it, it's like, oh, what's plan B? And we don't have a plan B. Well, he doesn't have a plan B.
It's just very pragmatic. It's just that's the thing with England, and again, like, you're playing Italy with the greatest respect in the world. Italy, they're a great side now. They're one of the they'll give you a great game. They'll give any team in this tournament a great game. They'll put you under pressure, but England have better players than Italy. That's just true, and you have just a wealth of attacking talent there, and I think you're exactly right. I think it very much, I'm probably going to quote Ben, I think it was Ben Youngs again, you're just trying to not lose the game rather than win the game. You're trying to, it's exactly that kicking game, that pragmatic style, let's get edge up our way up the pitch through that kicking game, rather than sort of looking to maybe spread it about, maybe change up, just have different phases. Maybe you go to the box kick sometimes just to vary it up, just because you've got some good wingers that are good in the air, but you also need to sort of like strike. I think one of the times when you did sort of strike was for that first Freeman try, and it looked really good. And one time where you did sort of change up as well with Finn Smith was that crossfield kick, and it got you points. I think it's just this emphasis, and it was Atoje going for the points again. Whereas I think at that point, you talk about them shouting at Finn Smith. I think Finn Smith had a point, to be fair, because you were on top there. You had the territory at that point. I think you probably could have gone for the try there, maybe. I just think in general it's a little bit too pragmatic from Steve. That he needs to sort of let Lee Blackett take the reins. I mean, he did a fantastic job with Bath. We know Baths, and I don't think Baths have been clicking in the same way this year, quite frankly. I think they've got great players. I think that's getting them through quite a bit. But I think Lee Blackett, he's sort of, he sort of modelled that back line, and it was so effective last year. And I think if you can let him have a little bit more creative freedom, then that could be quite handy for him. But he's picked the same, and we'll move on to this because I think this is a good segue to this game. France England. 8 on the Saturday night. This will be, whatever happens in the Scotland-Ireland game, France, at the end of the day, have it in their own hands. If they can get a bonus point victory, they will win the championship. England, on the other hand, they went into this tournament thinking this game would be the sort of the Six Nations decider. It's not transpired like that, as we've seen. They've picked the same team, apart from one, Chesham, in the back row as the last time out against Italy. What are we making of this one? Do you think this is sort of Steve just trying to stick with what he's doing and try and sort of, I guess, be pragmatic, or do you think we're going to sort of see a different game plan imposed? What do you think?
I don't think he'll change the game plan, to be honest. I think it's one of those. It's why change the game plan for when you're not going to. This team isn't going to play again together for another couple of months. You know, they're not going to play until the summer. So why change the game plan for one game in a tournament that you can't even win, kind of thing. So I don't think the game plan will change. I'm kind of fuming about the team that he's gone for because, you know, Italy didn't deserve to win that game. I will say that because England it's so difficult. They deserved to win the game only because England didn't step up to the plate. Like, you look at all the stats and everything, like England had the territory, they had the possession, they had the opportunities to do something with the ball, but they just didn't. So I think to go with the same team when you've just lost to a side like Italy, you know, I say this phrase all the time: if it ain't broke, don't fix it. It's broken, so fix it. So I don't know why the one change he's done is gone, okay, yeah, let's take Underhill off, let's bring on, have an extra option in the line out to kind of match that physicality. But then you look at the back line and it's not changed, and, you know, I don't get it.
Well, what do you think we're going to see from England, man? What do you reckon we're going to see in this game? Because France, they'll be hurting after last week. It's not a particularly nice fixture to have after losing to Italy. France away when they're chasing the championship. Is there any way that England can sort of look at that Scotland game and sort of get at France, and France conversely, what do you reckon we're going to see from them?
I think one of the only things that might change is that Ben Spencer's given a bit more freedom to create some of the magic that we've seen him create for Bath. I think that will be one of the few changes. I don't think, you know, he'll still probably say relieve pressure with box kick, chasers has got to be better. But England put a clip out today on their Instagram of them running through some back moves, and it looked village. It really didn't look good. And if I was a French player watching that, I'd be like, guys, we've got these guys on toast. It was quite embarrassing, to be honest. But yeah, I can't see England winning this. I hope, in a sense, France give England a good pumping so that Steve Borthwick can turn around after the game and go, okay, I need to change something, and soon. Because we know that we can win games. We know that we can graft out performances. We've done it we did it in the autumns, and everybody was lauding us, and, you know, I was included. I was singing the praises and thought this would be an absolute cakewalk. But we've made life so difficult for ourselves, and at the end of the day, he is at the forefront of that. He's got to take the ownership and has therefore got to implement the changes that come with it as well.
Do you think it's just a bit too much like stagnation in terms of you had that great autumn and it seemed to be working well, and you see the whole thing with the Palm squad, that's completely gone away. There's been very little impact off the bench, really. It just seems to have gone really, really sour. What do you think they can show in this game to sort of... You say they're not, you don't fancy them. What do they need to show in this game to, I guess, give themselves a bit of, I guess, a G up to going forward? Because at the end of the day, they're not going to win the Six Nations. That's guaranteed now. They're probably going to finish fifth, most likely, which is not a great. It's not good at all, really, from them. What do they need to show in this game?
A bit of confidence. Just back yourself a little bit. You know, if Murley, Roebuck, Daly, Atkinson, Freeman, any of them, if they're running with the ball, just go for it. Just actually back yourself a little bit, because, you know, none of these guys are in the England squad off a whim. You know, it's not just been a couple of freak performances in the Prem and then it's just like, oh, snuck their way into the team. Like, they've proved themselves. So carry that forward. You are playing for England. You're wearing the white jersey that carries that should bring you so much pride, and it probably does for a lot of the guys. But it's the old New Zealand mantra: take the shirt off in a higher place that you put it on. Basically, meaning that once you take that jersey off, be proud of the performance that you just put in. And I don't think any of them, taking that shirt off last week, could have said, "Yeah, I was proud of that," or "I was happy with my performance." So I think, just a bit of confidence, just almost disregard what the coaches are saying. Just play a bit more ball in hand. Stop resorting to the kicking so much. And if you're going to chase, and if you are going to go down the coach's route and go for that kick chase, then actually chase it and compete and just get involved. Because we would, like you say, it was so stagnant. It was so reserved. I think the yellow cards also killed us in that game, and therefore delayed the Palmer squad. But it just was not good. It's not good.
Yeah, well, I'd have your prediction for the game.
I'd say France to win by 30.
Wow.
England won't get more than 3 tries. England won't get a bonus point. They might get 3 tries, but I reckon France by 30.
Wow, 30 points is quite a bit. Well, I'm not going to go for us. I think it's going to be slightly closer. I think France ultimately, even after that Scotland game last week, I was sort of thinking they've got the bonus point there. They're back at the top of the table. All they need to do is consolidate their position. And I think if they're going to win this game, they will win it with 4 tries. They always, they've got so many tries in them. They've got so many different ways of scoring points. So I think they will win this game. I'm probably going to go for 36 points to 15.
I'm going to change my answer slightly. I'm going to say it's going to be 22 points.
22?
It's quite harsh.
Oh, okay. Yeah. You're just still hurting a little bit, Dom. You know what? Fair play.
I'm just angry.
Yeah, well, I'd anticipate France. Yeah, they'll win this one, 36-15. I think England hopefully they strike a couple of blows. I guess from an Irish perspective, you sort of want it to be a bit of a tighter game. See if England can sort of shore up the defence and stop the 4-try bonus point, or even a win. Ireland would probably need from England, but yeah. I fancy France to complete the job. But moving on to that other game, we got the first game of the day, which will be Ireland-Scotland. And this is an opportunity for both sides. Ireland on 14 points, Scotland on 16. Scotland in a bit of a better position. They can put pressure on, either of these sides can put pressure on France here with a win, particularly with a bonus point victory. What do you reckon we're going to see with this one? We've seen a bit of sort of back and forth not back and forth, but we've seen a bit of, a chat going on this week. Ireland obviously talking about their 11-game win streak over Scotland. I think Darcy Graham and Scotland were sort of saying that Scotland feel confident, going into it, that it's maybe not the Irish side that's maybe done of the last couple of seasons, obviously still respecting the opposition, but did see that quote flying around somewhere. What do you think, reckon we're going to see with this one?
I think you mentioned it earlier that the squad that played Wales for Ireland wasn't the strongest by any means, and it was, players were being rested for the big game at the weekend. They got the bonus point. That's all they'll kind of really care about. They kept Wales at bay, touch and go at points, but they got the job done nonetheless. So I think that would have been a massive weight off the shoulders. But I think Scotland will win this. I think they'll go and do it. Sorry, I hate to raise the parade, but I think they've been the better try scoring. They've been able to stay in games a lot more. I think there's a lot of variables. I think if Gibson Park has a game like he did against England, then it could be a cakewalk for Ireland. But equally, if we get anything close to what we've seen already from Scotland, then they are in with a real shout. Yeah. Obviously, the bonus point is what they'll be looking for, so maybe their defence will slip a bit and allow Ireland in a bit too much. But who knows? I think it will be close. I think both teams will get a bonus point. But I'm going to say Scotland will take it by 8.
Yeah, well, okay. Yeah, I think it's an interesting one. It's a fascinating watch because on one side you've got Ireland, who have won 3 games in a row. They're probably outside bet, even if they do win for the championship. It's unlikely that you would think that England are going to beat France. You never know. Of course, England have the quality in their side, but do they have? Can they get their heads together for the game? Ireland, it's a big one because Scotland are going to come, and they're going to come with quite a bit of firepower and quite a bit of confidence after last week. It's probably, we've probably said this for the past couple of years running, but it's the best Scotland side they're gonna face. They do have a good record against them. For Scotland, this is absolutely huge. This is the litmus test for them. They've gone and they've beaten. We've asked, can they beat a France? Can they beat a proper, a tournament contender basically that's not England? And they've answered that question. Yes, they can go and beat France. They've got the quality to do so, but can they back it up? That's the thing, because I think the emotional energy from last week's game against France, the whole Murrayfield crowded with them, that just fantastic performance. Can they? I don't think they're going to need to hit those levels to beat Ireland. I think if they played anything like they played last week, they will beat Ireland. I just think that's the case, because that was just unbelievable. Can they hit a similar level and beat Ireland this weekend? And to be honest, my answer to that is going to be no. I don't think they will. Part of me, just because I think Ireland, even if they do win, it's unlikely they'll win the tournament. Part of me would like to sort of see, for the furore of it, for the excitement levels, I would love to see Scotland sort of take it, and then sort of see what can happen, because I recognise that Ireland for this tournament, it was very much a sort of a transitionary period, but obviously you want Ireland to win, but I just don't think Scotland are going to be able to just hit that quite same level. I think it'll be a very tight game. I think Ireland will take it by 3 points. I think I'm not quite sure if they'll get the bonus point. I would say they will, because as you say, I think Scotland will probably go for it themselves. And they did concede a lot of points last week. But yeah, I just fancy Ireland, because I think at home, if it was at Murrayfield, I'd say Scotland. I think it's that close now. But because they'll have the Aviva home advantage, it'll have a lot of players coming back in. It looks like they've sort of settled down again, or sort of playing some decent rugby as well, even if that was only for periods during the Wales game. I think they'll have this one, and then they'll put the pressure on France to go and beat England. But moving on to the last game of the weekend, which is the middle fixture, 20-5. This one will begin in Cardiff. Wales versus Italy. I guess compared to the other two, it's probably a little bit of a dead rubber, because I think Italy, it's sort of unlikely they're gonna. You probably say it's unlikely they're gonna finish third, given the 5-point gap between themselves and Ireland and the points difference. But it's probably unlikely they're gonna finish fifth as well. England, given the task England will have in Paris. Wales, on the other hand, not a dead rubber for them, but they are very unlikely to finish anything other than sixth with the wooden spoon again. What do you reckon is going to happen in this one? Do you think Wales can build on last week and finally get a victory?
No.
Okay.
I think it's try scoring ability for Wales still, that they just haven't found that missing piece yet. I don't think their team's out yet, but I think even if, I know that Tom Rogers rejoined the training squad, and I think even if he came in and they made a couple of tweaks here and there, I still don't think it would be enough. The team that they've got at the minute is solid, but equally so is that Italy side. Italy have only scored 62 points themselves, only 3 more than Wales, so it's either going to be freedom to let both teams absolutely hammer it out against each other, and it'll be quite high scoring, or, and this is the option that I think will happen, I think it will be fairly low scoring, kind of chipping away at each other, and Italy take the victory. Again, I think it'll be by like 11 or so, but I don't think it'll be very high scoring at all. Wales, again, maybe 2 tries, a couple of penalties, but yeah, I think, like you say, it is a bit of a dead rubber game, because Wales pretty much nailed on dead last. Italy pretty much nailed on fourth, unless England can somehow beat France. But yeah, I think it's just the way that it's all panned out. This is a bit of a nothing game, but it will obviously mean a lot to to both of them, and I'm sure Italy would love to win on Welsh soil once again.
Yeah, well, you said it's a dead rubber for anyone that's not Welsh or Italian, really.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a dead rubber. It's a bit of just a, oh, yeah, we'll have a bit of a look at this one. Why not? We're already in the pub. We've already got a pint of Guinness in front of me. But it'll be an interesting one. I think for Wales, I think for both teams, really, it'll be such a big thing in terms of their stage of development. If Wales can get a victory, they can sort of go into the Nations Championship with a bit of confidence behind them that they can go and beat these tier one nations. You know, they obviously beat Japan in the autumn, you know, with a last minute kick. But if they can go and, you know, break that Six Nations hoodoo, the amount of confidence that they'll take from that, especially given some of the poor performances they've put in the last couple of weeks against Scotland and Ireland. It'll be huge if they can finally get over the line in this one. I think you're right in what you're saying with it being a low scoring game. Italy tend to have been a little bit more pragmatic this tournament, it feels, but like also just more clinical when they have had the opportunity. So I think I tend to agree with that, and Wales obviously haven't been scoring a lot of points as well. I fancy Italy, a bit like yourself. I'll probably go Italy by 8 points. I think it'll be fairly tight, to be fair, with sort of neither side, with sort of Italy not needing a win to secure anything really. It'll be a bit of just like a free hit for them. They'll go in as favourites, which is probably not always the best way for them to go into games because they're so used to being the underdog. But for Wales, it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity at home to have a crack. It's Italy. They are underdogs again. They have been throughout the tournament. But can they build on that performance? Can they shut out Italy? You know, with that defence, will we see more of that sort of like not committing to rucks? You sort of talk about ice in the rucks. Will we see that again this week? And then probably more interestingly, can we see a little bit more an attack off maybe first phase as well, to get sort of the flyers, and we don't know who's going to play, but can they get Louis Summit in the game? Can they get him through gaps? Can they find gaps in the Italy defence, which has been very good? So it's a huge test for both sides, but I would fancy Italy by 8 points for this one. But that will be the 3 games on the weekend. Super Saturday. I'm sure for everyone that is interested, even partially in rugby, it is the biggest day in the rugby calendar. So fascinating one to watch. We're very much looking forward to it. We're very much looking forward to running down all the consequences next week. You know, can Scotland win their first ever Six Nations, or is it going to be another triumph for France? We'll find out next week. Thank you very much for watching.